Okay, so welcome everybody to supporting your student success online, our latest in the Teach Anywhere series of workshops and webinars. And I hope that this will be, we won't make you guys speak out a lot, but we'll be doing some stuff in the chat window. So you might want to take a second to just open up the chat window and like if you can just quickly tell us what department you're from or what you teach or whatever you want to quickly tell us, that'd be great. And that way we've also established that we're all good and ready to contribute. Okay, we got Russian, German and Russian, chemical engineering, inorganic chemistry, School of Social Work. We got a few stats, religious education, communications disorder, English, and writing. Okay, great. If we stay at this small, it's a relatively small, intimate group relative to the nearly 40 we had on Tuesday. So will hopefully breed some good discussion. So start off with this quote from Jenna Gillette Swan, and she writes about the online environment presenting added challenges for our learners. And I like how she points out, particularly with engagement, access, community, and support. And that these issues, as you can see, lend to anxiety. She says specifically with technology use, but it can be anxiety in a lot of ways. Being out of the comfort zone and inability or difficulty in peer interaction. It can be an isolating experience. So when I was doing a master's degree, I had an online course and I got off the course schedule because I was used to a paradigm where distance courses were kind of go at your own pace. And so I would answer the discussion prompts and stuff like that. And I never heard from the instructor. I never heard from my fellow classmates, but I could see all their discussions and that they were having this great time together. And I plowed through, I made it through, but it was kind of a lonely experience. And fortunately I was doing it in order to help support my family and all these kinds of things. So I had motivation to do it, but some of our learners aren't going to have developed that self-regulation to keep going in the face of isolation. So where we can provide some support, I think it's a great idea. So why do we need to support our students? Let's just cover a few quick ideas. Completion and success rates in online courses are historically lower than face-to-face. Okay. Students can, I've already told my story, can easily feel disconnected and isolated in online learning. And as you move to blended, yeah, you may have some face-to-face time together, but with social or physical distancing, that may even look completely different than what we're used to. And so finding ways to support our learners even in a face-to-face course and blended course, I think is going to be important to help mitigate that disconnection and isolation that we might feel. And then let's be honest. I think the whole pandemic and social distancing and being stuck in our homes at times and all that kind of stuff, it's been hard on all of us. So I think just having compassion for our students and realizing that they're navigating these difficulties and oft times with less life experience than we've had, it's a good idea um, to be there for them. So I just want to open it up. Like I said, we're kind of a smaller group. So any other thoughts on why it might be important to support our students? You can chime in or just put it in the chat and I'll read it out loud. Um, okay. Stephen, I know you're always wise beyond your years. So what do you have any thoughts? I don't want to call you out. You can pass if you don't have anything to say at this point.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, well, I don't have anything particularly inspirational to say, but I think just we love these students and they come here to BYU for a great experience and vested in their success. We really want them to have as wonderful a kind of learning encounter and experience as they can, really reasonably have under circumstances as they vary. And anything we can do to try to help them look back on their experience years later and say, this institution cared about me. They worked hard to try to give me a good education in light of these difficult and challenging circumstances. And hopefully they feel our love and our desire to help do as much for them as we reasonably can under these circumstances, and feel that the university cared. That's why
Yeah,
I'm.
that that's a great point. Thank you. Um, we got a comment in from Grant. Classes are boring to students without engagement. I would totally agree. Sorry about that. Um, so thanks again, Stephen, for that. That blends nicely into what our goal is for today, and that's to be able to provide adequate support to our students so they can be successful in our courses and thrive at BYU. I don't think any of us want our course to be the one that left a bad taste in our students' mouth about their experience at BYU. But beyond that, I mean, we care about our students and we want them during challenging times, especially, but learning online or in blended environments, they're going to need a little more support as they are developing their ability to self-regulate, to be self-directed in their learning and things like that. So by way of quick refresher on some of the principles that we've taught in previous sessions in this series, I'm going to just review quickly the 4 core principles about caring for students and their learning. And that the fact that you're here today, kind of tells me that you are interested in caring for your students and their learning. How we organize our course is another way to support our students so that they can see the end from the beginning and know their way to those ends. Relevance, and when they can see why they want to get to that end, then it's a much more engaging and motivating experience for them. And then we should try to assess our students and evaluate theirs and our efforts in creating this learning experience in a way that helps us improve and helps our students improve. So in Richard Swan's first presentation, he talked about all these questions that kind of go along with these 4 areas. And I'm just going to leave this here for just a second so that you can look at those questions. But I want you to consider how the things we're talking about today can ultimately help us answer these questions, help our students answer these questions, right? Um, so I want to pause because we had Katie put something in the chat. I have already had students reach out concerned about how they can be engaged and connected in classes in the fall. I think reaching out with compassion and understanding will go a long way in realizing we're all going to need to be very flexible. That's wonderful. We'd probably stop there and it'd be worth our while, but we're gonna keep going with a few more principles, and then we're gonna get into some practical things that you can do to support your students in that light. So one, I just want to remind those of you that have been with us in other sessions and maybe introduced to others this idea of community of inquiry, that a good educational experience is supported by teacher presence, the teacher being there and helping students, sharing of themselves, personal meaning, helping direct a little bit where things go in the course, helping the students stay on track and so forth. Cognitive presence, actually engaging with the ideas that are part of what we're trying to teach the students in the course. And then this social presence. That includes interactions between students and instructors and student-to-student interaction that can help facilitate learning, but also motivation and engagement in the course. And then another idea quickly, the idea behind the theory of cognitive load, that there's three basic types of cognitive load. There's intrinsic and germane and extraneous. And as you can see on this graphic, the intrinsic load is that really relates to the fact that learning any new thing, it has a certain level of complexity, and where we can keep that part simple, that's a good thing. Also, in a learning environment, there's extraneous cognitive load, and that is, what am I supposed to do? Distractions. How do I navigate um, this learning management system, or just all these different things that come into play um, that I think are enhanced because we're used to classroom instruction as students, but if we haven't been doing a lot of online learning, suddenly we've got a new environment um, to deal with. So what we want to do is find out everything we can do to reduce those kind of extraneous taxing of student cognitive load, so that more time can be spent on what's called germane cognitive load, where they're actually deeply processing new information, where they're seeing connections between what they're learning and what they've previously learned, and and um, trying out new things, finding new applications for what they're learning and things like that. So we had um, another comment. I'm going to invite my 80 students to join me on voluntary basis a couple of times this summer to try out Zoom technologies, especially my ability to see their videos on a larger screen monitor, that I will help make a connection and let them know I'm trying. I think that's great. And question, is there a way to share best practices amongst us? We're trying to facilitate that in part through Teach Anywhere, Roland, and but we're updating the site in the next couple of weeks to find a better way to do that than we've done in the past. So thank you for that question. Okay, so with that, so here we're going to discuss kind of 6 high-level kind of ideas, and then we'll talk about some specific ways to address that. First would be to get to know your students. Okay, so what are some ways you've done in the past to get to know your students? So let's take a second and just in the Zoom chat, if you can put in anything that you do really quick. I mean, Okay, personal one-on-one interviews with each student. Yes, I've tended to do that as well. Um, John also said a quick get to know you meeting with students. Uh, Kara talked about making a one PowerPoint slide about yourself, your background, and each person shares the first 5 minutes of each lecture. Um, I have them share introduction videos in a discussion board. I spend the first week of class asking students what they want out of the class. One-on-ones have worked best for me. First day introductions, ask them what they want to learn in the class. So those are all great ideas. And in fact, um, uh, they address most of what I'm going to share next. So um, online introductions, if we're teaching at a distance, we're going to have to do it online, right? So we can do that through digital dialogue and Canvas discussions, probably the easiest way, because there the students can record a little video of themselves and introduce themselves. But you could do it through, having a little, uh, having them post a little slide about themselves or a PDF that kind of is, a infographic of themselves, or those kinds of things. That would be great. Get to know their names. So somebody, Roland already put this, using photos to try to memorize their names before the first day of class. So we do have BYU flashcards at flashcards.byu.edu. There's the class roll app um, that has kind of a flashcard type feature. The thing I like about the BYU flashcards is I can check how many I get right and how many I get wrong, and review just the ones that I got wrong for a time. But I always have to come back and make sure I keep testing myself on everybody. It really it really has been at times uh, kind of scary for my, well, not scary, but like whoa, kind of a whoa experience for my students when they walk in class and I call them by name and greet them. I'm not going to be able to do that this semester. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to get to know them. But then I would say once you've gotten to know their name, then address them by name in your communications, when you're in class, um, things like that. Just using their names, as Dale Carnegie said, the I can't remember the exact words, so I'm going to have to paraphrase. But the best sounding word or sound to a person is their own name. And so I think you can make a connection with your students that way. And then we've talked about, if possible, have one-on-one, or if you have an incredibly large class, maybe have small group meetings with each of the students so that you can get to know them on a personal level. And even if your course is completely remote, you could um, schedule those, our on-demand delivery, as it were. You could schedule those meetings in person, or not in person, but via Zoom or some other way. The next um, the next thing would be to clarify your expectations, right? Um, to clearly communicate to your students what it is that is going to be expected of them from the course. That can be in, like, during class time, um, during the week, what is the ebb and flow of the course. So I want to, I'll show you some more on that in just a minute, but um, if you're having online discussions, what are the expectations for that? In your assignments, what are expectations? Using rubrics so they know how they're going to be evaluated on their performance and so forth. Those kinds of things are really important. But the next piece is also a vital piece. Clearly communicating to your students what they can expect from you. And that can be, if they email you, when can they expect to hear back from you? Is it going to be a couple of hours? Is it going to be one business day? Is it going to be 24 hours, 48 hours? Um, Setting those expectations. Um, when are you gonna return assignments? What can they expect that way? So that if you know, if they're clear what you're expecting of them, and they're clear on what they can expect of you, then that can make for a lot easier semester. It just can. So any other thoughts on this? You can either chime in, or you're welcome to put something in the chat. Richard, could you put the link to BYU flashcards in the group chat for Juan?
Can do.
Okay. Roland asks, is it reasonable to expect synchronous participation with video on? It depends on how many you have, right? You need to be conscious of the bandwidth issues, because some students some students who are trying to come in may have a bad experience if everybody in a 200 people class have their video um, on. But you can be selective about when that happens. Certainly, if you're trying to get the students to engage, putting them into breakout rooms and having them turn on video in the smaller breakout rooms, and you jumping around and getting to know your students and stuff like that. That's a I think a reasonable expectation. And I like what John had to say, allowing the students to use a virtual background, so they, wherever they happen to be. But that can be part of clarifying the expectations. Like, I expect you to have the video on, so I expect you to come to class, at least with your upper torso dressed ready for school. But, say, hey, let's do our best to keep the dressing and grooming standards, because we're still BYU faculty and students. So let's do our best with that. That can be an expectation. I don't think it's unreasonable to have those kinds of expectations. So great. The next practice would be to orient our students. Okay. And what do we mean by that? Well, let's look at a few practices. We got here are a few ways. So one can be a week 0 unit, where we explain, have the students read the syllabus, explain how to use the tools that we're going to be using in the course, to help them know what they need to do to be successful. So I want to jump ahead really quick to this thing. So I saw this on somebody I follow and engage with sometimes on Twitter, showed her kind of visual weekly schedule for the class, and she just turned it into an infographic and explained to students, okay, Mondays you're going to have a concept check, and then Tuesdays you're going to do a reflection based on your reading, and Wednesdays we'll have a synchronous class, and then Thursday there will be follow-up discussion on that class, and then sometime that weekend. I don't necessarily advocate for having assignments due on Sunday, but you get the idea that we're going to have a weekly culminating assignment, right? So I think that can be really kind of a helpful thing. So in addition to that, that week 0 unit that we kind of lay the groundwork for what the expectations for the course are, we can have a weekly email or announcement to keep our students oriented and remind them, okay, here's what's coming up this week. And maybe if there's something bigger coming up in a few weeks, hey, if you haven't started your paper that's due in 3 weeks, now's a good time. We're going to talk about some other things you can do if you have larger assignments like that in just a little bit. But another thing is to use the learning path or modules in Canvas effectively, where you can unit by unit or week by week or whatever, you can kind of lay out in order the things that the students need to do to be successful in the course, right? If you're teaching an advanced graduate course or whatever, maybe you don't need to lockstep your students through what's supposed to be done this week, right? And that can be more open. But you can use Path to make it clear, here's the sequence of activities that I would do if I were you to be successful in the course and to learn what you need to. And we're going to do a training on how to use Path, and there's already a recording on how to set up Path and use that on Teach Anywhere under the spring Learning Suite training. And if you need that on Canvas, you can contact us here at the CTL, and we can show you that as well. Another thing is to improve your assignments instructions. For a long time, I would just kind of put a description that said, here's what you're supposed to do. And I'd get tons and tons of questions from my students. What are we supposed to do? I don't get what we're supposed to do. But when I started breaking it up and being a little bit more specific about what the purpose of the assignment was, what exactly they were supposed to do, what deliverable they were supposed to turn in, and how their performance, how their work was going to be assessed, then I started getting less and less questions about what they were supposed to do. I still get questions, and I listen to those, and then I try to use those questions to further improve or refine my my assignment descriptions over time. So let's just look at an example of this. So we could have a stats class where we have an assignment that says create 3 research scenarios for a single sample t-test and run the data and interpret the results, okay? Or we could have something like this, right? Where we say, you know, the purpose of the assignment is to help you recognize situations that are appropriate for single sample t-test. If possible, you can include, here's which outcome this is helping you achieve. We've got some better instructions here, a little more specific and delineated. And then what they're going to deliver is a file with the 3 scenarios and the results formatted correctly, and an interpretation section. And here's how it's going to be assessed. Now, we can include a rubric, right, that gives more detail than this. But if it's a simple assignment, maybe just stating it like this. If it's a more complex assignment, then we'd also include the rubric that's maybe a little bit more fleshed out, right? So any questions or thoughts at this point? Okay. So our 4th idea is to scaffold student learning, okay? And a couple things I want to say is, one is consider requiring mastery of basic knowledge. So there's a physics professor that I'm friends with, and he has some basic core ideas that he wants his students to know in order for them to be able to solve problems and in order for them to be able to talk intelligently about the field and stuff like that. So he actually has set up multiple exams that the students can take multiple times until they get 100% on those things, so that he feels like they've got this core knowledge down pretty well so that they can get to higher orders of thinking. So that can be done with quizzes that are retakeable or that require a mastery approach. That can be just providing really good feedback on quizzes or whatever. That can be checkoffs of certain skills before students can move on. I also worked with other faculty where they, in order for the students to be able to go into a lab, they had to check off or pass basic skills before they were allowed to have, free range in going to a lab and um, doing experiments and things like that. Another thing is to build the students' skills up towards a larger project. So if we have a big research paper, could we scaffold it so that, hey, I want you to, we're going to have a deliverable where you're going to actually come up with the research idea. And then we're going to have you maybe write or create an outline or do a brainstorm of what you're going to do, and have those be deliverables, or at least something that they get checked off so that they're going they're kind of stepped through the process rather than just told, well, here's all the steps to the process, now go do it, right? Giving examples of what you're expecting of the students and having them spend some time evaluating those examples. Those could be good examples, non-examples, that they learn to develop their own analysis and evaluation skills, so that when they're creating the work for themselves, they're able to better self-evaluate or peer evaluate. All those kinds of things as far as scaffolding projects and scaffolding learning, and then slowly removing that over the course of the class can be beneficial. The fifth practice is to be with them. Okay, so what are some ways in an online class that you can see that we can be with our students, even in a perceived asynchronous on-demand delivery? How can we be with our students? What ideas do you have? Let's go ahead and throw those in the chat again. And I apologize. We are just a few minutes over time. We're gonna wrap this up. And of course, if you need to go, you can go. We'll have the recording online, hopefully before the end of the week. So if you feel like you wanted to not miss the last few minutes and you need to go, you're fine. But we're also going to be here till the top of the hour answering questions. Okay, Wendy said record videos on Zoom and insert with the course syllabus. Okay, I like that. I'm not teaching asynchronous, but I try to be on the meeting a few minutes early and engage students as they join, asking them how things are going. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So let's go to some ideas here. And I appreciate that, John, because not everybody is teaching asynchronous. And I hope these ideas are applicable to everybody. But to make yourself known and be authentic generally, that can be in the way you write synchronous or asynchronous text that they may be reading, or creating videos for them to view as part of the course. I like that, Katie, hanging around afterwards and taking questions and so forth. That's good. Providing timely and personal feedback. And I'm not talking about providing a lot of feedback, but focusing in on what's really important, and two, showing where possible a personal connection with the student in relationship to what they've said, and so we might call that elaborative feedback, right? Like where they say something and you elaborate with personal experience or those kinds of things. we can also engage enough in online discussions. So that can be when we're in synchronous courses in maybe breakout groups, coming in and helping keep things going with ourselves or TAs or something like that, but not taking over. Um, it can be on online asynchronous discussions by prompting students to contribute, um, commenting on a few students' discussions, but not trying to be overbearing in those discussions. And we are going to have a session or two on more effective online asynchronous discussions and things like that. And then I think we talked about sending a weekly email to orient our students, but making that not just a list of here's what's going on this week, but actually being personable and kind of going back to that first point, being authentic with our students, talking to them about what what's going on in life outside of the classroom, and those kinds of things can help students have that sense of instructor presence, right? And then using virtual office hours effectively. Now that can be just opening it up like, okay, I'm available at these times, but there is research that has shown that you can do some other things like having a purpose behind your virtual office hours, saying, okay, if you need help with this topic during my office hours, I'm going to be, asking and answering questions about this topic, or, those kinds of things can be a way to improve students actually showing up to those virtual office hours, or extending invitations to students periodically through the semester to come and engage in office hours and touch bases with them. And then, and so forth. So, and then the sixth and last principle for today, helping those who are struggling. Some ways we can, I'm going to just go through this quickly because we're out of time, but monitoring student progress. If you're looking at the grade book and seeing people who aren't turning things in, or who are scoring low on key assignments and things like that, that can give you an idea of who might need targeted help. And in conjunction with that, we can check in with those who are struggling, sending them an email or a message, inviting them to meet with us during office hours, or for a private, Zoom consultation, or, those kinds of things. It's a good idea to do that early on in the semester before students get too far behind, or if they're really getting lost in that first week, either making a plan to get caught up or discussing the possibility of dropping the class before it causes any problems. Let's see. Help them see what's not working. So if you have a student that's scoring low on your exams, or struggling with other types of assignments, you might talk with them about, so how did you approach this? How did you prepare for the exam? How did you go about organizing your time or whatever for getting this project done, and helping them work through maybe better strategies. Maybe they were spending their time rereading the text and looking through their notes. And so maybe you can point them to strategies like doing retrieval practice, or other more effective uses of their time. And then I would say, don't forget to occasionally engage with and check in on students who are doing well or just okay, because they can be struggling too in other ways. besides just academically. And so don't forget your other students. Um, so quickly, just share this little thought from Elder Anderson. He talked about, President Nelson said, I urge you to stretch beyond your current spiritual ability to receive personal revelation. He counsels us to pray, to listen, to write down our thoughts, and take action. Can we apply this to ministering or teaching in a holier way? Let us pray, listen, record our thoughts, and take action regarding those to whom we can minister. Pray for opportunities to build faith in others. Pray that these opportunities will come to you. Listen, write down your thoughts, and then be ready to take action as people are put in your way. Well, the people are put in our way. So I think that's good counsel, to figuring out how we can teach and minister in holier ways. I think those terms are in a way synonymous. So the last thing before we open up question and answers, just take a couple of seconds, write down for yourself, and if you're willing to share in the chat, please do. But what's one or two things that you have taken away from your thinking today? It doesn't have to be anything I said. Hopefully it's something the Spirit prompted you to do, or just an idea that occurred, or something from the chat that that other people have shared, and so forth. Those are all great ideas. And so, and then we'll get to a few comments that are in the chat, and open it up for other questions and comments, because we would like to hear your ideas, and so forth. So. Okay, so okay, so Wendy said increased explanation of assignments. I like that. Let's get back to a couple other comments. Hanging around, whether it's class related or not. Okay, Bruce Bergen told me about calendar or Calendly. Calendly. I can never say that word. It's fantastic ways that students can schedule Zoom meetings with you. We are looking with OAT at some possible solutions for easily scheduling students. Katie asks, can anyone provide ideas of what virtual office hours might look like? I'm concerned that I'm losing one-on-one time with students like I get in regular non-COVID times that allows for privacy. Some students are more willing to talk one-on-one about their questions than with the group. Okay, so I'll open that up. Does anybody have any thoughts? Okay.
So Mike,
Yes.
one possibility that some faculty do, and it's kind of to make sure that students know that they're serious about office hours. They mean it when they say, come visit me. Mm-hmm. They'll schedule some group meetings with 4 or 5 students kind of in the first few weeks. They'll use their office hours and actually schedule appointments to meet with a group. And it kind of breaks the ice so that that they know, oh, this faculty member really does want to converse with me. And that seems to, it's not a silver bullet, but it seems to kind of break the ice and help some students, get past that barrier.
Yeah, and certainly once they feel that comfort meeting with you in smaller groups, then they're usually more willing to reach out one-on-one for help. And I think just constantly inviting your students to reach out if they do have questions or concerns. The students appreciate it, and then if they do reach out and they do feel like, hey, yeah, here, my instructor actually responds back to that request for help, then they're going to get over that. I can't get to it right this minute, but and I didn't add it to this next slide, but there is a paper that I'll put my email address in the chat, and if you're interested in this, there's a paper that talks about how to make virtual office hours in a asynchronous course more effective. It doesn't necessarily get at per se how to get students to come in one-on-one, but I've found that talking with somebody one-on-one over Zoom, it's not quite the same as being in person with them, but it's not necessarily that different, right? We're able to get pretty personal and, still kind of look at each other in the eye and those kinds of things. So if you want to email me, I can send you the link to that paper though, or just send you the paper because it's downloadable and publicly available on the web in an open access journal. And then I just share with you here some of the places that some of the ideas for today's session came from. Yes, I even included my own dissertation, so apologize for that, but Stephen Yanchar was on my committee, so he can tell you whether it was any good or not offline later. But so those we'll be posting with the video. I'm going to post a link to the slides. It may be in PDF format for ease of access, but you'll be able to get these references later. Are there any other questions or concerns or ideas for the rest of us that have persevered this long since we went from about 15 to 16 down to 9, so we've lost almost half of us, but some people just had places they had to go, but I commend you for your hardiness, and I hope you got something out of today's session. Yeah, thank you, Katie. In a follow-up thing, we'll talk more about how to use Learning Suite and other technologies to also facilitate this support of students, and also some things related to universal design of learning on how you can make your course materials and course activities more accessible to a wide variety of students, and some things like that. So look for part 2 coming in probably within the next few weeks. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Bill. It's good to see you. Bill and I served in an Elders Quorum presidency when we were graduate students here at BYU many moons ago. So.
That's right. Thank you. Very helpful.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see y'all later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you, Steve.